Hello, hello, hello. So, yeah, I hope we are live. This is my first time controlling and operating a computer. No, just a bad joke. No, yeah, so welcome to our Flutter Meetup November edition. It's the 25th. It's a Thursday evening, 6:05, and yeah, we are ready to go with our online edition of this time's meetup. Actually, it's been 1 year since we did our very first online meetup in this whole circumstances and such, and yeah. I really hope that my Wi-Fi is stable enough that I can, yeah, actually that you can actually hear me and that the presentations are all fluid and such. But yeah, let's get started. First of all, I'm Eric. I will talk about myself later a bit more, but just so you know, I'm also one of the organizers and part of the Hamburg Flutter and Beyond crew. And yeah, I would say let's get started. And just one more note. If there's any audio problems, just let me know in the chat, and then we can see if it works out. So, yeah, first of all, before we get to the agenda, we want to say sorry that we had to cancel our on-site event on this short notice. That was really, yeah, was heartbreaking. We were really looking forward to this in-person event. Like yeah, we thought of the safety procedures and the health regulations, and we're always in close communications with Moya. But it couldn't be. It's just like, yeah, the numbers are rising too fast. It's too irresponsible. And yeah, this is why we had to take the break on the last second. And yeah, we are sorry for that. We want to do this as soon as possible. Want to, yeah, do the on-site thing and then also hopefully continue in the long run. But yeah, but we also want to say thank you to Moya that you offered us your office spaces and yeah, communicated so transparently with us all the whole time. That's really great. A big thank you from our side. And yeah, we just hope that we can host a future meetup in your yeah, spaces. So with that being said, what is in store for us today? So as you probably read on our meetup page, we have 3 talks prepared for you today. The first one will be presented by Kevin, and he will talk about a blockchain D app. I'm very excited what this will be about. I'm not really sure, but he's the first talk, so we will know in a bit. The second part will be my turn. Will be a little bit of experience report. You could say it's called From ES5 to Dart, Welcome to the Future. Yeah, maybe a little bit provocative. Also contains a lot of jokes and cheesy references, but this will be the second part. And last but not least, more or less be like, yeah, let's say a very technical view on the navigation 1.0 versus 2.0 topic presented by Renee. Yeah, you probably have seen him already on this stream already. And yeah, he is also a co-host of our meetup. And yeah, this will conclude our talks. You can always ask questions. We will handle them after each talk collectively. And then afterwards also do a small AMA if the time allows it and we are not too over. And yeah, with that being said, I would say hopefully Kevin is in here. There he is. I will add him to the stream. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, nice to meet you.
We've met.
Um,
We've met before, not so long
yeah,
ago.
yeah, of course, of course. It's already my third talk at the Flutter Meetup. So yeah, hello everyone. Um, blockchain D app is the topic for today. I learned one thing in my career that the best way to learn something new is to teach it to others. So therefore, I was happy when our colleague Mike, I think most of you are familiar with him, when he asked me if I have a topic for Flutter Talk, because during that time, a few weeks ago, I was starting to think about going hands-on into the blockchain, because until now, maybe as a lot of other people too, I was more investing into cryptocurrencies, but also now I wanted to start to develop in the blockchain. And I thought it was a good opportunity to do this together with you. So what I want to do today is to give you a few insights how to start with the first application. And yeah, let's do this. I will share my screen.
All right, then have fun. I'm out.
Okay. Good. Here is my screen, and let's go to the presentation. Wait a second. So first steps into the blockchain, Flutter dApp. What is dApp meaning? We all know what an app is, and with a D in front, it's called a decentralized app. As we all know, blockchains are built to be decentralized. A little theory, and I don't want to go so much into details, and I was also lazy, and I don't want to even write down bullet points, but I have this link here to a pretty good website which explains a little bit also the difference between a blockchain and a database. So just for you, that you also understand what are the most important differences between the blockchain and database. No, I don't want to sign up right now. Fuck. Okay, so the key differences. Somehow I cannot scroll here. Sorry, guys. Now it works. So the database, as you can imagine, is centralized storage of data, and in the blockchain, I don't want to. Okay, guys, I have to do it without this link. This is because I was too lazy. So with my own words, in the end, in the blockchain, compared to a database, everything is decentralized. So you only have the blockchain with nodes where the data is stored. There is no admin. There's no one who is responsible for the data. So therefore, everything is decentralized. And what is pretty important for you to understand that within a blockchain, everything is kind of immutable. So whatever you do in the blockchain is irreversible. So that's something super important. And therefore, I will also show you how you can create a safe environment to develop for the blockchain. There's definitely much more to say about blockchain versus database. I will just share with you later the link, and then you can research on your own, because I think it's also not super relevant for the first steps we want to go into the blockchain. Another important concept are smart contracts, because this is also what the code is all about in blockchains. And smart contracts are, as I said, is a program or a code which is run on the blockchain. In our case, for the use case today, in the Ethereum blockchain. I think all of you are familiar with Ethereum after Bitcoin, the second largest cryptocurrency. And in the end, it's nothing more than a collection of code and functions and data that is at a specific contract address on the Ethereum blockchain. So each smart contract has an own address, and you can interact with it. In the end, it's also like an account in the whole Ethereum world. You can imagine it like this Y account, because every contract has also its own balance, and you can send transactions via the network to the specific contract. And a contract is code, as I said, and the code is there to define the rules, like a regular contract, but just in a way that you cannot even misinterpret it. It's clearly written down. That's also one of the advantages of smart contracts. You define, for example, the conditions for a credit line. Yeah, like that's important for the DeFi world, the decentralized financial world, and then it's in stone. Yeah, no one can change it anymore. Even there's no banker in between. You just define the rules, they're written in code, and then you can make use of these contracts. So therefore, they automatically enforce the rules just by code. A contract cannot be deleted, as we said, because the blockchain is irreversible, and so also the interactions. Therefore, you have to be careful with what you do, and I think especially in a situation like ours, where we are new to the whole world, we should not work with the real blockchain, because also transactions they cost money, or in terms of Ethereum, they cost gas. And because Ethereum actually is super successful, the gas prices are also really high. I hope that will change with Ethereum 2.0, which is in the making and hopefully will be rolled out next year. But if you are curious about all these topics, I think you can do your own research. I want to focus on what it means to start developing in the blockchain, but also doing it with Flutter. So in the end, what we want to do is we want to create a hello world first, where I just show you the simple concepts of the setup. And then we will also do a small extension to this, where we also make a real transaction with Ethereum, at least with test account Ethereum. So it's nothing really valuable. The very first thing we have to do, and I will do it live here, as usually my talks, I will do live coding. So what I want to do is I want to first create our Flutter project. So Flutter create, and I will call this project Crypto Meetup. And here we go. So now we have our Flutter project initialized. And the next thing we need is the Truffle suite. So what is a Truffle suite? In the end, it's kind of a suite of tools you need to develop for the blockchain. Here you can see the website. In the end, you have Truffle, which is kind of the development environment, also provides you with the possibility to test everything. And then the second important tool is Ganache. Ganache is a one-click blockchain. So you can download Ganache, and then you can run your own blockchain on your own device, which is also something important to understand, that every node or every node in the blockchain, they have a copy of the whole blockchain, and so you will do also when you run the blockchain on your own device. So these are the two important tools. Honestly, here is also Drizzle. I never use it. I don't know exactly what it is. So I will focus in this session on Truffle and Ganache. So right now we have created our Flutter project. Usually, if I would not have it installed already, I would just install Truffle Suite with the typical npm install, which you also can find here if you later want to do it on your own. And then when we have our Flutter project created, we can also initialize Truffle. Straightforward with Truffle in it. So now everything will be created for us. Small question about overriding. And now we have everything we need here. What is created by Truffle? In the end, we have a few new folders now. We have contracts. Here we will write our contract. And you can write contracts in different languages, but the most common language to write Ethereum contracts is Solidity as a language. I will show you how it works in a few minutes. And then we have also a folder for migrations. So these are the relevant files to handle the deployment. We have a test folder for test scripts, and we have our config, which is also important to connect later to Ganache, as I already mentioned. But before we jump into all those topics, I would say let's write Solidity code. So we will now start with our Hello World contract. And to do this, I will go into my Visual Studio Code. Yes, I trust the author because it's me. And as you can see, here is our folder structure. Here we have contracts. There's already an existing Solidity contract, migrations Solidity, but we will create now our own, and we will call this as creative as we are, hello world.sol. And then we will start writing. So when you start a Solidity contract, the very first thing you always type is a pragma command to define what kind of Solidity, what kind of version we want to use. And in our case, it's 0.59. As far as I know, the versions, they change a lot. So don't worry if you see code with other versions. It's in the Solidity universe, something which changes fast and a lot. By the way, I have to write Solidity. Solidity, yeah. The next thing is then contract, hello world. And then we define a string, and this string we define as public, and we call it your name. And this will hold our name. Right now we just do this whole thing for demonstration, but whenever you really want to code for the real blockchain, something you definitely should know is that strings are super expensive. So the saving the string data can be really intense in terms of gas fees. You can investigate on your own, but I can tell you that one approach is to use events instead, because you can emit events from your contract, and then later you can listen to these events, and then you can store values outside of the blockchain. This is one recommended approach to handle strings. But this is not our problem right now. We will just go deeper here into our first Solidity contract. So we create a constructor, and we also make this constructor public, and then we initialize in our constructor our variable, and we say that now our name is unknown. So this will then the initial state of our contract, and then we create our function, and we will have a function which we call set name. Then we say string. Then we define memory. When we say memory, this already means that the string is persisted in the memory, which is cheaper, by the way. So therefore, we also use memory here. Public should be written correctly. And of course, this is not a super special function. The only thing we do here is we assign our variable to our contract, and that's it. I'm just wondering why this is red here. Source file requires different compiler version. Okay, this will change over time. Don't worry about this red thing. This will change in the moment we have our migration scripts done and everything. So this is now our contract. The very next thing we have to do is we have to go into the migrations folder. And here you already see that there is initial migration JS file. What I will do now, I will create a new one. And I say to underscore and then deploy and hello world.js. And now I will create my script for deployment where we say constant hello world. It's JavaScript as we know it. And we say artifacts, acquire, and hello world. So that's one important thing. And then the next step is module.exports. And then we write our function. The function gets so-called deployer. And then we say deployer.deploy. And we say hello world. And that's it for the migration file. So this is just the code we need to deploy our contract we just wrote. The next thing is the config file I already mentioned, truffle config.js. You can see here the initially generated one is a really big file. I don't want to annoy you with all the nitty-gritty details here. So what I just did, I already have a copy here for what we need for our test. So I will just replace this here. So in the end, what we define here is our local host. I will show you where this comes from, our port, our network ID. Here is the build directory we will have for our contracts. They will be generated when we compile everything. And then we have informations about the compiler here. That's the minimum setup we need to run it locally. And the missing piece we also have is we have to start Ganache, which I downloaded. And after download, it's super straightforward. You just have to start it. And then we say only quick start Ethereum, and magically we will have our own Ethereum blockchain, which is now running. And you can see here is also the local host defined. Here is the port defined, which you can see here in our config. So that's the point where this information is coming from. And you also see that here we have a few test accounts. I think it's 10 test accounts, and those test accounts, they all have 100 Ether to test and play with. So that's the setup we wanted to have. Now I hope everything will work as expected. So we need to say truffle compile. So now our contracts are compiled. Also, what you can see here, that now here we have our source artifacts which are created, and here you have also now the hello world JSON, and here you see in JSON the definition of our contract. So this is what is generated now. The next thing is we have to run the migration with truffle migrate, and this will now compile and deploy our contracts to the blockchain. And it gives us an error because I can already see there's something wrong. Wait a second. So hello world. Damn it, where's the problem? Hello world, hello world. Here we have the problem. So this happens when you do everything live, but hopefully now it will work and we will have our contract. Yep, total deployments. And now you can see also for our contract, hello world, here's the transaction hash of the transaction which just happened. And you can also see that we have a gas price, we have gas used. So that's what I'm talking about. You should definitely develop an environment like Ganache, because here you have no real cost. As you know, the Ether price is actually around about $4,500. So I think it's much better to do it in a safe environment, especially when you deploy again and again, and also you do a lot of testing. You will not do it on a real blockchain. You have also other possibilities. Instead of locally, there are also test blockchains, but that's maybe a topic for another session to introduce you to. So now our contract is deployed, and also when we go to Ganache, you can here see the transaction which happened, and here you can see content creation. So also on the blockchain, we have now the transactions. So this is everything we have to do outside of Flutter. But now let's also go into the world of Flutter. By the way, I jumped over all these nice presentations, but I think I mentioned everything. So now we will go to Flutter and what we will create here. First of all, I will create a new file and I call it contract linking.dart. And here we will write our code for that. But before we can write the code, we also need, as you can imagine, we need a few packages. And the first package we need is called web3 Dart. Or let's make a shortcut because then we don't need so much time. I will just copy the pubspec YAML from here because I already created a project where I had all the dependencies and then I don't have to go to every page. So these are the packages we need. And the end, they are free. So we need web3 Dart, which is an blockchain or web.free wrapper for Dart. We have provider, as you all know, to do a dependency injection, and we have a WebSocket channel, which is important to have our RCP channel to the blockchain. So let me save the pubspec YAML so that we can do the installation. And while this is downloading the packages, I think we can directly also start with the contract writing. When I just check the time, maybe we should also do a small shortcut because you don't have to watch me typing. So I will also copy the code so that I can just guide you through the code in order to have the time to show you everything I wanted to show you. Come on, let's go here. So I think that's much more comfortable. So this would be the code for our contract. What we will do, first of all, we create a change notifier. So simple provider magic we do here. I don't go into the details. And then we have a variable here where we define the contract name. In our case, this will become hello world. We have our RPC URL and our WS URL, which are both the same. So it's localhost and 7545. Exactly what we have here. So instead of 127.0.0.1, we just wrote localhost. We can do both. Then we have here our Web3 client we want to initialize, and we have our contract we want to initialize. Also, here is our Boolean to tell the UI if something is loading or not. And then we have our constructor where we will later give the contract name, which will be, in our case, hello world. And then we run the initial setup. And the initial setup, this is where the magic happens. So the very first thing we do is we create our client. And here we use Web3 client. We give our RPC URL. Then we create an HTTP client. As you also can see, HTTP is also here imported. And then we also define our socket connector with the WebSocket channel where we also connect to the WS URL. And we will cast everything to a string. And then we have our client we can work with. The very next thing we want to do is we want to get our AB. I also have a small explanation for you what this really means. In the end, it's a binary interface. Here I have some information about this. So application binary interface, that's what we will interact with. And in the end, it's just the interface between two modules. And one of them usually is on the level of machine code. That's also what is happening with Ethereum, where the contract are transformed to run on the EVM, the virtual machine, and the other way around. So that's just an encoding and decoding process. We will also do in a few seconds, or I will show you in a few seconds, to interact with the contract directly from the blockchain. So here is this get Abby function. And here you can see what we do. First of all, we take from the root bundle our artifact file, which is our hello world JSON. And then we call the decode, and also we encode again when we access the JSON ABI. By the way, if you just want to know what we are doing here, you can also check these artifacts, and you would see even these areas. So here you can also see what we access, or you can go for everything. All the informations are here, the deployed address, everything is in those files. And this is what we are working with when we do these simple calls here to decode and encode. Then based on from the ABI code, we will get the contract address, because we don't know the address before the deployment. This is what we do here. So we go into our JSON ABI, then we access networks with the right port and the address. And now we will have our Ethereum address here. And with the address, we now are able to create a reference to our deployed contract. So we will do this with the contract ABI based on our JSON with the contract name, the contract address, and then in our contract variable, we will have access to the deployed contract. This is what I created here and call it contract linking. And to use it then specific, I created this, an extension to this class, which I call hello world. And here I have no additional information we need to do work with our hello world. So we have the private key here. Where comes the private key from? This is just from an account here. When we go to accounts, I also have to change it because I did it earlier with another blockchain. So I will just take and copy the private key here, and I will add it here. So now we can work with our new blockchain. And then you can see we just start with hello world. And here now we have our get name and our set name functions. And what they are doing, you can now see here that we access our contract, our deployed contract, and we say, give me the reference to the function, and we give the name of the function. Just for you as a reminder, when we go to hello world, here is the set name, and the get name is the default getter for our public variable. As soon as the variable is public, you will have this function. I think this is something you are familiar with from other languages. So now we have here our reference to the contract, and then we can do just a simple call where we say client, web3 client, do a call. The call expects our contract, expects the function we want to call. And if we would have parameters, we can also give the parameters. Then we will receive the current name, and we can save it to our variable deployed name. Then we will inform that loading is done, and we can notify our listeners, and the UI will update. Then we have set name, where we do again the same thing. We have a reference to our function. What we also do here is we create credentials from our private key, because now we want to know if the person is allowed to do what he wants to do and who is doing this transaction. And then again, we do client, but not call this time, because it's transaction. We say send transaction. Then we use our credentials we just created, and then we do a transaction call contract, where we again need the contract, we need the function, and for the parameters now the name to set, which is our string here. So this is right now our Dart code to access and to interact directly with the blockchain. Also, because I want to save us time, I will not show you how I code the UI. I will just give you a brief introduction to it. So go over here. This would be this. So here now we have our hello world. So now we have our provider with the contract link here. We have a kind of text controller, and then we will have a text field where we can enter our name and we can send the name. So, and then we will also display the name. So pretty simple UI. And here is the whole magic where we say set name on our contract link. And after that, we just clear everything. So super simple UI. I think all of you Flutter guys are familiar with it, so I don't have to explain it. The last piece before we can hopefully run everything successful, and I hope I don't miss anything, is our main Dart. Also here, I make a shortcut. Let's go into the main Dart. Of course, you're not there anymore. So here we now say we want to have hello world provider, hello world, and then we also say hello world UI. So also you can see here nothing special. We just say our UI. I showed you the widget will be our home, and all the things are wrapped by the change notifier provider with our hello world. So we should be now ready to deploy this whole thing. So let's see what will happen when we start our application. It's a few seconds to run. Okay, why this is running, because I still see that we are already close to the 30 minutes. I will also show you the second example, because this is not so special, because we just show this hello world. The next contract we want to build is the contract where we do a real payment. And while our app is compiling it's building, I will just show you how this example could look like. So copy this, so then I don't have to do it on my own. Oh, there's something. I missed one important thing, guys. That's definitely something you should not miss, because of course we have here our artifacts, and we also access them in the root bundle. But as you all know, when you want to do this, you also have to put them in the pubspec YAML. I forgot this. So the missing piece is the assets. And here in the assets, I will add this information. I think there was also already the pub spec YAML, so I can just copy it again. Don't have to go here. So, hello world JSON. Now we have our artifact also here, and now when I would run again, hopefully it will work. No, there's still a problem. Yeah, this should not be a problem. Ah, here. Okay. Now we run this app again. Hopefully this will be faster this time because we had an initial bit already. While this is delaying, we will create our next contract. We call this contract payment, super straightforward. And here we will have a mapping, which is a map as we know from other languages too. And we will map an address to a uint. Why? Because we want to make sure that what address or which address sent how much ether to our contract. So this will be in this variable here, and that's it. So by the way, now we are here, and I say my name is Kevin. I say set name, and as you can see, the name is set, and this happened on chain. And as you can also see here now, our balance is reduced because we have to pay gas when we want to make a transaction on the Ethereum blockchain. And also here you can see the contract call, which was executed with all the details about it. You can see what was the gas price, what was the gas used, and of course the binary information about the contract. So super simple, nothing special, but now the name is not read from the database, it's really read from our blockchain. But as I said, the most important thing for working with a blockchain, of course, is money. So let's, as fast as possible, go through this here. So the first function is called receive money. We make it public, and now we also have this payable, which means this is a transaction function. And what we just do is here we say, hey, message sender. This is the address for our mapping. We say balance received. We set now for the message sender, we increase the amount by the value we sent to our contract. And the other thing we will do is function withdraw, so that we also can get money out of our contract. So here we say as parameter we will have an address, and this address can get money, and it is our to address, so where we want to send the money to. And we also need the amount of money we want to get. And it's public. I have to make it public too. So yep, this is how this will work. Then we also do a check, because it's important that the user who wants to withdraw the money from this contract, that he has the money. So you can only withdraw money when you have the amount of money. So we check this here, and we also have kind of feedback, not enough money, my friend. Why this is failing if it fails. So this should be true. So no, if this is true, then we will fire this program. Good. That's it for now. If everything is fine, we can do whatever we want to do. And in our case, we want to send the money. So first of all, we have to say message sender. And we say reduce the money by amount. And then The next thing we want to do is to send the money. We say to transfer amount, and here we go. So that's everything in this contract. So I think also, again, from the readability, it's pretty straightforward. We set the money, or we increase the money by value, and here with the amount we want to have. If there is enough money saved in the contract, we will transfer it back to the sending receiver. Of course, what we have to do now is also to create our small migration script, which is super easy because we just create this next file. We say deploy payment.js, and then payment. That's it. We go to our terminal, and by the way, I cannot really see it here. Up. So first we go to truffle compile. Hopefully everything works correctly with our new contract. This looks pretty good. Then we do the migrate, and hopefully we see how our second contract is also deployed to our blockchain. Yep, it's done. We have also our gas costs here, and thank God I already have the code here. So the difference in this code, now we have the payment example. By the way, this contract is called payment, and now we have the function receive money, where we will send over the address string from our account and the amount of ether. And also here, again, we need our credentials, which we create from our address string. We then also need the function receive money from our contract we created. And then again, we have a transaction where we need the credentials, the contract receiver. And then here in value, we give this function call the value of ether, which will be automatically used. It's not a parameter, as you can see. Why? Because we didn't define it as parameter. We just say to in this function receive money. And because it's a payable function, we just have to give this message the value. You don't need a specific parameter for it. It's pretty simple, and it's part of a native Ethereum functionality, if you want. So when we have done this, we notify our provider, and withdraw money is pretty much the same. We have our credentials here again for the address. We have our contract, and then we also again say call the contract. And here's the difference, because now the parameter must be the address, because it's also potentially that you use another address, not just the one from the caller. And also we have to send the amount of ether. To do this, we create first of all the ether amount from our int, and then we make it to get it in Way, because we expect it to send it in Way. Way is, by the way, the unit you use for gas in the Ethereum world. So 1 Ethereum is 1 ... Way. Super weird. So therefore, I also made it pretty easy with the integer here. The last thing we have to do to make also this working, we change to payment example here, and also to the payment UI. It's the very last step, and then we are done with this small presentation, which was already too long. I'm sorry for this. So payment UI, which is pretty much the same as before. So I don't have to show you. We have 2 buttons here, and we can enter only amount of money. Also, we have to import. Oh no, wait a second. It's called payment example. Also here, example. I think this is done. The last piece must be in the main file, I think. Now we say here, instead of hello UI, payment UI. And now, of course, it complains about our missing asset. Holy shit, time is running. Zack. We are ready to go. Let's start the app. Also, let's use we would use the same address again. Contract. And it's also wrong because I need the private key. Therefore, it looks weird. Private key. I don't know why my machine is so slow. It just needs so much time to build right now. Ah, here we go. So let's also now to see what really happens. Here we say, okay, now we want to send 5 ether. And again, it froze. Damn it. What is the error? Ah, we don't have enough funds to send. Okay, and definitely we have an error message. I don't know why we don't have enough funds, because we have a lot of funds. Maybe I missed something. But anyways, I think I have to stop this presentation in order to be fair to the rest of the people. Now it worked, as you can see. Let's do it again, just to see it in real-time. 5. As you can see here, it changed. And now when we say receive, we want to get 5 back. Maybe this is not working. Is there an error or something? Yeah, there's something going wrong with receiving, but I think we will stop here. I will share with you everything I will fix it and share it with you, and then you can investigate it on your own. But this is, in a nutshell, very first beginning of how to interact with a smart contract in your own local environment, and yeah, create your first blockchain application. So, yep, that's how it goes, by the way.
Cool. Thank you very much, Kevin. Just a side note, we will, of course, like all the presentations and the code that we have, we will make available for you few days after the meetup at latest, as soon as we get to it. But you will get the stuff and can read it again if you want.
Yes. Okay.
So, any questions from the viewers? To Kevin, of course. Is there anything? Grisha, what's in the YouTube comment section going on?
Looks like no question, right?
Seems everybody is able to develop blockchain apps now. No, but
yeah, I think you have to do it on your own, right? You really have to touch it. I mean, I just wanted to give a brief overview about all the different tools and steps you have to go through.
No, for sure. Like especially this. Hopefully, I don't get the pronunciation right. Ganache or Ganache.
I heard it's called ganache.
Ganache. Okay. Ganache.
Yeah.
No, okay. I found this tool very interesting. Like I haven't wondered, but like it makes sense that there's also like some local host or some development environment that you can have on your own machine running, like to not spend fortunes. Yeah, if you're not careful enough.
Definitely. Also in the slides, I didn't have time, but there's also an online IDE I wanted to show for Solidity. So it's called Remix, and you can also connect it to your local device, and you can much better even test and interact with it. So when you check the slides, when I will share them with you, give it a try. It's a really cool tool, online IDE, much better than Visual Studio for Solidity. And
All
there
right,
you can
so
also interact with the Ganache and also with test blockchains and the real blockchain.
I would say let's just keep an eye out on the Flutter meetup page. We will either share a link there or share files directly there. I'm not sure if that works, but anyway, you will get access to them. So
Cool.
then I would say thanks, Kevin.
Thank you too.
Hope to see you around and have a nice evening.
Thank you. You too, guys. Bye bye.
Bye bye. All right. So this is the first talk down. We're a little bit over the time, but we are not doing a break. Hopefully, yeah, you can hold any urge, food and drinks for later. We have two more talks coming your way. The first of all will go in a completely different direction, I think, and will be presented by me. Also, if you're wondering like why I'm not always looking in the camera, like I have the stream overlay and stuff running on the second monitor, so this is why like I'm a little bit here and there. So yeah, just if anyone wondered. So let's switch over to no, not Renee, but let's switch over to the correct presentation. All right, let me get my windows straight. There we go. Yes. So from ES5 to Dart, welcome to the future. Like I said, it's a little bit of a provocative title maybe, and yeah, like it's not going to be a technical deep dive or something. Like it's more going to be an experience report. But let's get to my motivation in a bit. Um, First of all, I yeah, don't worry. It's also my Twitter pic. It's little information about myself because I think I gave a introduction at some point, and I also did half a talk at the past meetup together with Renee about our Flutter homepage, but just wanted to give a few buzzwords like yeah what's to know about me. So I'm Eric, 27, and currently living in Pinneberg, which is sometimes a joke to people who live in Hamburg because we cannot drive, but yeah, it's just a side note and only very funny like if you're from Hamburg or like from the vicinity of Hamburg, not if you're an outsider. Um, I'm working for Netlight Consulting as an IT consultant, and where I'm working at currently as an assignment, going to tell you about in a second. On the private side, my hobbies are gaming, which will come again in a future slide. Badminton for sports. I'm also a hardstyle DJ, sometimes for a few hours during the week. The meetup organizer, and since I don't know, like since 3 months or so, I'm yeah, I'm a dog dad of this beautiful Labrador called Loki, and yeah, he's sleeping down the alley, so that's very nice that I can give my talk in peace at the moment. No, but he's great, and yeah, so as you can see, this is going to be a very lightweight talk. Um, there's going to be cheesy jokes and yeah, there's going to be some fun involved, maybe some insights, but let's get to it. So one side note also ahead of the time, there's a little bit more information on the slides than I would usually put on. It's just like for the sake of like doing a live stream presentation and then having this the slides afterwards. I just find a little bit more charming for the consumer than afterwards. That is you to have more context about what was going on, just that you don't wonder like why is sometimes a wall of text on display here. So let me quickly just okay. There are a few comments that I now witnessed, but we can also talk about them later. Yes, the motivation for giving this talk. So it's mostly because I was getting back into the Flutter world recently. So But personally, I'm working in a totally different tech stack, you could say, that is like very, very far away from the bleeding edge of the mobile development that we are doing with Flutter, or that like, yeah, that is happening in the Flutter world. So the tech stack that I work in mostly, or like most of the day for the past couple months, is web development in the domain of a big e-commerce platform. Yeah, like I don't know if I'm allowed to talk too much in detail about it, but just like no, yeah, cross-browser compatibility is a big thing, like because it's a very broad user base, and therefore like you need the most basic vanilla JS that you can use in this context, just to make sure like everything is working across the board. And yeah, this takes a lot of effort and also sometimes a lot of nerves, like just to get right. There's a very big website in the web development world is called caniuse.com, and there you can just check any API, like where it's available. And oftentimes you will see that either Internet Explorer or also Safari, which is very sad, yeah, that they are not on the supported browsers list. But yeah, also we have legacy dependencies and distributed knowledge. So this is, for example, also very big, like contrast to my last year's assignment. Last year, I was working in a very small team for a Flutter app that was a rewrite, tough word. Yeah, there was a rewrite, and that was a whole different like dynamic. Like it was very, very isolated. We were working towards a product, we were working towards a deadline, and now it's more like support and like ongoing business, you could say, if that makes sense. So yeah, the motivation for giving this talk is what is the feeling after switching from JavaScript to Dart and back. And yeah, what is also like we are focusing a lot on Flutter and these meetups. What is happening in the meantime on the website of Live? Is there anything cool that might be interesting or might also like affect the Flutter world? And yeah, we are going to go over this. So just need to get rid of my mouse because I'm running in window mode. Yeah, the motivation for picking up Flutter again is mainly a personal side project that I'm working on together with Renee. And I don't want to get too much into detail with this. A lot of it you can already read, but the general idea or the context is in the game borrowing in friend circles, which might sound like a little more sophisticated than what it actually means. It's basically like that you have an overview of what kind of games your friends own, like physically, and that you then have an overview when you want to rent something. Like, I mean, sometimes it comes up in conversations, and then you can just say, like, could you bring it? And then the other side is like, yeah, you can just borrow it for any time you want. And so the side project then like has, yeah, you can think of it as a specialized eBay Kleinanzeigen. So I'm a little bit of a yeah, little bit of a power user in the Kleinanzeigen domain, and yeah, much to my girlfriend's dismay, like there's a lot of chatting involved. Like when you want to get people to trade with you, when they have a game, you have a game you want to trade, you have to do it on the postal way, and this can be a hassle sometimes. And yeah, this is really not necessary. So like yeah, just for our friends circle, we want to have like a platform where you can add the games you have, and then also just know if you, yeah, in a position or you want to buy a new PS5 game, for example, for 70 euros at launch price, which is like really really unreasonable. Yeah, that you have an overview, and that you can then maybe skip the buying and just rent from a friend. So this is the motivation for picking up Flutter again. So let me just, yeah. And I almost forgot, I have a lot of windows open. So I wanted to make a quick switch to the development, yeah, status basically of this app. It's a very early prototype, as you can see. It's very straightforward that you have a library view. You can search for games against an API, and you can have settings. And yeah, like there's very, very high subject to change, of course, all of it. But just that you have an idea what we're talking about, I'm also going to revisit this code for a few examples later in the talk. So let's get to it. I've been outside of the Flutter world, like aside from a few meetup topics. I've been out for a few months, and it was especially the beginning of the year, like around February, March, like all of these months where like the big Flutter releases happened, like where Navigator 2.0 was introduced, and yeah, where a lot of different things popped up. You can see it in this beautiful hand word cloud. Um, what the hell has happened basically? Like there was a lot of catching up to do, like especially with the navigator stuff and the navigation implementations I had in last year's assignment. Like what does it look like today? And also very important, how does it look in comparison to my daily work? So what is the comparison to vanilla JavaScript? But of course, take a step back to make comparison, get the hands dirty, baby steps, install Flutter. So that's what I did. Of course, like there is not much magic in that. I just wanted to include this cute baby Yoda GIF. So hopefully you don't mind. And yeah, so there was no real surprise there. Like I had to set up Flutter completely from zero because my machine broke. Actually, the logic board of the MacBook just fried randomly, and then I had to get it changed, and they wiped the storage, and I had to set up everything again, which is always a hassle, but always also nice too, because then you can set up only the things and that you really need. And then I installed Flutter, and yeah, there's no hassle with that. It's only like the whole environment, like when you want to develop against Android and iOS and like the whole package, like it just takes time, especially Xcode. Like when you want to download it and setting this up, like it just takes some time. You need a good internet connection, and yeah, but this is like the only real downside to this. So I mentioned vanilla JavaScript in the beginning. So this is what I'm actively working on. Um, Basically, it's yeah, patterns I'm working on. So think, for example, in the direction of like a slider. Like when you have a ranged input, like two inputs, and then you have like a slider with two thumbs below it. Like this is the stuff I built with vanilla JavaScript. And this is challenging in its very own right. But to take a step back and also explain a little bit behind the scenes, basically, is the title. So from ES5 to Dart. So ES5 is probably not a term that like everyone, especially in the mobile development sphere, is familiar with. So the ES stands for ECMAScript. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? It's just very old, and I don't know, stuff back then just had weird names sometimes. But ECMAScript is the specification for the JavaScript language. So yeah, like it's not actually like you cannot put it on the same level. It's basically the foundation that JavaScript is built upon. So and when you have new requirements, new specifications built into ECMAScript, they are then being adapted basically by JavaScript. Like yeah, it's like one process, but it's very close and tangled together. ES5 was released in 2009, so it's been a minute or two, and yeah, 12 years actually. Oh man, yeah, we are getting old. But what's important about ES5 is that ES5 is like the version or like the specification of JavaScript that is running everywhere in the browsers without support. Like that is the syntax that you can just type and it just works. Like you don't need any compilers like Babel, if that's a term for you. Like it's a very broad topic, doesn't have much to do with mobile development, but I just want to drop some terms just for the sake of it. And or for example, you heard of TypeScript, like it's the type the type safe version of JavaScript basically, which is very similar to Dart actually. So like switching back and forth between TypeScript and Dart is actually pretty easy. But yeah, I'm using in my daily business mostly vanilla JavaScript. Like we're actually using ES6, so it's like one newer version. but like it's being compiled with a system, and then like you can just use some nice things, and then on the website we have polyfills that basically in all the browsers account for the missing functionality, but ES5 is the baseline. And as you can see, like what was added when ES5 was introduced. So we have things like string.trim as a method. We have isArray as an array method. Allows trailing commas for object literals, like very, very basic stuff that like nowadays, like basically every programming language supports, like maybe not with these names, not in these forms, but very similar. But this like was the big thing, the big things that happened back in 2009. And yeah, nowadays we have ECMAScript 2021. You might be confused, like why is it called ES5 and ECMAScript 2021? This is a little bit weird. Like has historical reasons. Like at some point, I think with ES6, they actually switched. ES6 is also ECMAScript 2015, and yeah, it's very confusing. Also for people that work in this field, like myself. But if we compare it with the feature set that was introduced, actually they release in June or July every year. So this is from June or July of this year. Um, we have logical assignment operators. Numeric separators are actually interesting, like how to separate large numbers in code and when you define them, for example, as constants. And yeah, we have a long-awaited string replace all method. So a lot of things may be familiar if you're coming from the Dart world. So it's not too far apart, but you just have to keep in mind if you want to use these features, you need some kind of compiler that translates for the older browsers, or you need polyfills. And yeah, so hopefully you have an idea. Yeah, a little bit about JavaScript, a little bit like broadening the horizon, and yeah, we can continue. So you could say from my daily experience, I would say from ES5 to anything, like not actually only Dart is good. Like it's also known as JavaScript hell in a various of ways. And this is of course a little bit sarcastic. Like of course, like this is a very, very foundational programming language, and it has enabled a lot of things. Like it's just like you cannot get rid of it, which is good and bad on the same side. So but when I compare like simple things, and just have to work with me here, this is not rocket science that I do in my day-to-day work, of course, occasionally, but also there are just sometimes like periods where it's like nothing too crazy going on, like you use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, like that is very normal, but just needs to get written. You also have this in Flutter, like you always need like containers, you need rows, you need columns, like you see them everywhere. They are very basic widget, but still you have them in your daily work probably. So one thing that is more straightforward as an approach in Flutter would be how to center a container. So this is actually, you can already call this a meme if you want. Like this is actually on the right-hand side is a screenshot that I did in my browser. So if I just type how to CEN, like I get a whole suggestion box, like how to center a div, and basically it's all in the web context. Like over the years, there have been, I don't know, like a dozen approaches how you can center, and I mean vertically and horizontally. So there have been like a dozen different solutions that you can apply. There are also modern things that resemble rows and columns, for example, which you could use. But you could also do it with the code that I have here. So this is a container that is centered vertically and horizontally. And the relevant part is basically that it has an absolute position, is 50% from the top and 50% from left. And then it's basically like in the X and the Y direction, like it's pushed into the top left corner, like by half of its dimensions. So this is the whole magic to it. It's just coming from Flutter, it just feels, I don't know, it feels a little bit weird. Especially I wrote it like in Flutter, you can just use center, like for the most part. Of course, there are edge cases, like both doesn't apply for all cases, but a lot of the times you can just use center, and I don't know, just feels a lot better in my point of view. Then we have clickable area. So this is actually something that has been that has become more and more important for me or for my daily work. As for the website or for the web shop that I'm working in, accessibility is getting more and more important. So we are talking about touch areas. So this is not only an app or a mobile topic. This is also a very big thing in the web, because we have requirements now, also legal requirements. Not we or my client, but like mostly all consumer-facing websites are actually supposed to apply a certain set of accessibility options. Also, screen reader are important. But let's focus on clickable area for this example. So what I mean is basically what you can see in the right screenshot. So it's basically that you don't have a click listener only on the elements dimensions, but on like a certain area around them. So there are also like studies on how much touch area you need depending on how much or like how big the origin element is. But this is sometimes hard, like especially when you have the case that you work with other teams together and you share code, and then you provide them with sample that has like a specific solution that is fixed, and then there is basically the request to add touch area to this existing pattern. So then you have the problem that you cannot just add something around the clickable element, because this is most of the times the only approach you could use. Like to have something around it that has a space, like a padding. It's also called padding in CSS, and that you have a padding around the element that is then also clickable, and you have the click listener just on the wrapper container, basically. So this is the approach, which is sometimes tricky and can be breaking also if you're working in bigger contexts. Not always, of course, but it can happen, and then it's very annoying. In Flutter, yeah, you have the gesture detector. Like, it's of course not exactly the same case. Like gesture detector, of course, just gives you the option to add actually click listening to anything you want, but still, again, it just feels more straightforward. Like you can also I think in gesture detector make some settings like how he should listen for clicks. Not to go into detail there, but it is a very powerful widget, and I really like to use it, and just again feels better than the HTML and CSS counterpart. Just personal opinion, but just that you heard it. Then JavaScript has a lot of funny inconsistencies. So this is probably nothing new, and I just want to go over a few examples. This is why I prepared a little, it's not live coding, it's basically just live examples, you could say. And I just want to show a few differences, like how it behaves in the JavaScript world and what the counterpart in Dart would be. So we're 20 minutes in, we are good on time. So let's do the first example. So in JavaScript, it's possible that you have a chained comparison, basically. Like you can have A equals A, 1 is smaller than 2 is smaller than 3. So this returns a Boolean, of course. The same thing is happening for B. But just in a reverse order. So 3 bigger than 2, bigger than 1. So the question is, and this is where I'm really, really sad that we cannot do this in the on-site meetup experience, because it would have been really interesting just to make this end discussion so that you can think about it and just just scream in the room like what you think is the answer. This is of course hard in a live stream format, and just for the sake of time and that we can go through all examples, I will just run them. So we will just run the example 1 here, and what is happening. So the first statement is true. I mean, we know that they must be true, like just from our logical standpoint, but it is true, the first one, and the second is false. And this is weird. Like, why would the first one work when the second doesn't? So the explanation is very quickly here. So on the first is only what JavaScript basically takes as a result. So he takes them not all in one, but one after the other. So the first expression is true. True translates to 1 in this context. And then 1 is also smaller than 3, which then in total equals true. So, but the other way around, you have this as the crucial part then. You have true as 1 again, and true bigger than 1 doesn't work anymore. So this is a very weird inconsistency how JavaScript basically resolves this information. So in order to make this work, we would need to add the explanation and also add a equal sign after the bigger than, and then it would work. Of course, still it's like not the optimal result, but this is what you would need to do for this example. Quick look at the Dart example for this. We have the exact same thing, so we can run our example right here. Oh, okay, it's not working. Yeah, why is my IDE not telling me that there is a problem? So yeah, just so that it doesn't give away too much. Of course, Dart is a lot more safe, especially with its types and with its linting in comparison to JavaScript. And I had to ignore both of these, yeah, linting errors. So of course you cannot change this in this context. So you would need to split this up, and because after this result he would do a Boolean comparison with a number, and like it doesn't work from front to back. So yeah, of course no real big surprise there. Then our second example. This is a very classic one, but I wanted to include it anyway. We have funny math, and this is something I will also just quickly run here, our second example, and we see what works and what doesn't work. So the first three things work. This is already a little bit weird, and this suddenly returns 31. So this is because the plus serves a double purpose. I mean, not only in JavaScript, in Dart is similar, but in Dart it wouldn't allow for such a definition. So it just concatenates the 3 and the 1 in this case. Arrays are also interesting. Like when you add arrays together, like it doesn't even show up here. Like this is because they resolve to an empty string. We can show that like the output itself is not it's not broken, but it's just that this returns an empty string, which in my point of view is also a little weird. Then the example 2, we have the same example, but I don't want to spend too much time on here. Again, I had to ignore the errors that are present here. Of course, it doesn't allow for this operation because they are not of the same type. So of course you can do additional stuff to make this work, but yeah, just doesn't work, which is good. So then this example we can actually skip. So just for the sake of saving some time. This is also very interesting from my point of view and shows like, yeah, very big aspect of write JavaScript is inconsistent. So we have the type of not a number. So not a number is also something that is a thing in the Dart world. But as you can see, we are first checking for the type of not a number. So the IDE already gives it away. It's a type of number. Can we check against number as a string? Can we check against number as like the type? And can we even check if not a number equals not a number? So let's find out about this one. This is the fourth example. So the first type of number is a number and the rest is false. Like, like none of the comparisons work. Like not even the last one, not a number doesn't even equal not a number. And this is weird. Like just really, really shows how inconsistent the language is. There's no real good comparison how you would do it on the Dart side. Just made a few prints of basically, yeah, that it's just solid and it works. So not a number only exists as a property of double. So when we have this, we can check with the is And then we can also see like B is not a number, is the type of number. And also there's this handy Boolean that checks for is not a number. And the runtime type then is also like something that is very, very nice for type sensitive languages. Like we define A as 42 as a double, but say it's a number, but the runtime type is then a double, so gives you a lot of developer convenience. The last one is actually the coolest one. So this is why it's at the end. It's also something you might have seen before. I don't know, but it's a very common thing in the web development world. So when you have two variables, one is 0.1 and the other is 0.2, what do they combine to? What do they add up to? And do they equal 0.3? Which makes sense, right? Let's take a look. I'm already phrasing the things towards a certain solution. So what is happening? So A plus B equals 0.3 and then a lot of zeros and 4 at the end. And which then also explains why this part is false. This has like a very deep explanation. We don't want to go into detail in this talk, but this is very funny. There's also like a website dedicated to this problem where it's explained. You can also find all of the links I used in the slides, and then it's at the bottom. I will show you later that you can re-watch everything that I said. But let's take a look how Dart handles this problem. Probably better, right? Like it's a more powerful language overall. Same result. Like I was very confused by this and also surprised. But it turns out that like all languages that do floating point operations like this share this issue. And again, if you want to read more about this, I can only highly recommend checking out one of the two links in the resources. One is about what the fuck JS with a lot more of these examples if you're curious. And then also we have the explanation and the website for this floating point error. So I need to speed up a little bit. So conclusion, is it all bad? No light at the end of the tunnel. We have a lot of tools at our hands. There's first and foremost TypeScript in the web world. We have a lot of compiling, transpiling going on that you can use in used code in your environment and then still like get results, get builds that run across all browsers. So, and yeah, after all these things like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, like they cause a lot of trouble sometimes, but they have been around for decades, and backwards compatibility, especially with the ES5 stuff that I mentioned, is very important. So, and this is the main difference than with Flutter and Dart because they could start almost on a blank sheet, right? Like, of course, backwards compatibility in some sense is also important, but after at the end of the day, like it's not as old and not as founded in the web world or like doesn't have so much a legacy stuff going on. So yeah, can allow for a lot more modern development. If you're interested in these kind of things, latest news, features, tips, and tricks, you can follow, for example, one of my favorite developers, Tomek. He can be found on Twitter. Link is also in the slides. So this is Sim. And what he is doing, so he is one of the head engineers of this page. I also will just quickly show it for the sake of time. It's called StackBlitz, and it's, yeah, as you can see, when you know Dartpad, it's like the bigger brother. Like it has existed for a few years now, and just quickly, it looks like this. It is an online IDE basically with all of the nice things you can have from online IDE with IntelliSense, package support and so on. And also you have like a lot of templates, sample projects ready, which also sometimes have a dedicated domain, a dedicated address assigned to them. So if I type in veet.new, Veet is a web server, and hit enter, it spins a little bit, and then it serves me the StackBlitz environment with the app running, and yeah, takes a little bit, but still it's like very fast. It's all on the browser. You can do it on your tablet basically. And this is very impressive. So I've been following their development for a few years now, and they are constantly pushing new features. And if you want to keep anything in mind about the web world, keep in mind StackBlitz. Like if you don't want to have the hassle of npm and installing any global projects and packages on your machine, you can safely do anything you want in this domain. There's also, for example, an Ionic application that you could use or start when we're talking about mobile development. And you can also see how quickly all of this spins up, although my Wi-Fi really is not the best at the moment. And just like that, we have a sample Ionic project. You don't have to read anything about setting it up. And I think this is very cool. So this is Stack Blitz. So what happened with regard to Flutter? Now I just talked a lot about a web. Hopefully it was still interesting for you guys. But me personally, it's just a collection of thoughts. What I just basically viewed what has happened, like new packages got updated or like general stuff that was introduced to the framework. So one thing I saw was that the dev tools are now way more performant, like they are a lot more powerful to debug your application. They are also written in Flutter itself. So this is really cool. We can take a look at it in a few seconds. Then the whole Navigator 2.0 thing, where, yeah, sometimes it's easier to use packages to ease the pain, as I heard from some people, but Renee is talking about this in a few minutes when I finish my talk, so I don't want to give away too much. The Riverpod 1.0 release is here. Also don't want to go into over the whole changelog, but there are a few breaking changes. For example, that you now have a widget ref in your consumer widget build method. So I also use this in my personal project now, and I think it works really well. And also I realized like state management solutions, like they get released almost as frequent as JavaScript frameworks, which is also like an inside joke in the web world. And just to underline this, there's this page, fluttergems.dev state management, if you didn't know of this page. And like if I scroll down, there are so many state management solutions. And for like a beginner, it's really overwhelming. Like what should I pick? Like, how does it work? What's the best for like a high maintainability? But the same questions you also have in the web world. There's a page that basically has a sample page, and then for all, no, not all, but for a lot of different frameworks you could think of, you have a sample implementation. You have one for Angular, you have one for Ember.js, you have one for React in different combinations, and they all build this page right here. So it's a very simple feed website, a blog website, and yeah, they are doing performance tests also on this. So this is also a very interesting link. I also put this at the end of my presentation. One thing I haven't touched upon too much is the big Dartpad update. So they now support adding external packages to the development, which is very nice. But as the time runs out, I don't want to go too much into detail. One thing, I follow Tim Sneath on Twitter, and he posted this a few days ago, which is also pretty neat. Also for like the reception of Flutter as a whole, it now generates close to 3% of all Stack Overflow questions. And this is huge. Like just compare it to, for example, React Native and like the rest of the mentioned frameworks that are somehow similar don't even compare. Like this is a big win. Like really shows how widely, not only accepted but how widely distributed Flutter has come in the last few years. And this is just very cool to look at. This is something I have to skip now. This is basically just a collection of thoughts from my assignment last year where I used mobx, getit, and freeze, and now in the new project, which is a lot more lightweight in comparison to the clean architecture approach that we used in our last year's app, working with Riverpod, so far with no dedicated dependency injection, and also freeze package again, and the Go router, which is a package also that is up and coming, which I will show in a second for a few lines of code about. But the experience has been nice so far, and maybe next time I have also more updates about the personal app if that's interesting for you. So like I said, the packages involved in my process so far were the Riverport package, Dio for HTTP, Intel for internationalization, and the Go router. And this is used for the navigation in this project. And just to give you a quick glimpse how it works. So this is also why I included all this web stuff, because this is very similar to Angular router approach, for example, which I've used for years. And the idea basically of this Go router is that you have an array of routes that you can define, and then it uses the URLs basically to resolve where it should go. So we have these routes that display this app right here. So we have the library location, which also supports then as a sub route, which you can then just nest inside of here, where you can give it an ID as a parameter. You can also just navigate in here. You can jump between the tabs. Just that you heard of it, Go Router, one of these, there are many Navigator 2.0 solution packages that I've used and have liked this quite a lot. Yeah, I'm very sorry that this part was a little bit cut short. Next time, like I said, there will be updates about my development and yeah, just the new state of the app, hopefully after or like in the new year. To the conclusion, Rene is already in the starting seat. I think he's ready to talk. Yeah, the conclusion, basically, hopefully you learned something new. I know it was 3/4 was web development stuff, but I think sometimes they are very similar and also like affect each other. So it's not a bad thing to sometimes look a little bit on the horizon, what is happening there. And in this sense, what I want to know, and you can write it probably in the YouTube comments, there was a little bit of like a controversy from Tim Sneef. I mentioned him before. So he said that Flutter is not suitable for websites. And this caused a little bit of a confusion for a lot of people. So this is the tweet. So he basically tweeted about the new Flutter website. Check it out. It's very nice, but it wasn't done with Flutter, which caused confusion. And then there was a little bit of a discussion like, when should you use Flutter? Like, yeah, it's an app framework and not a website framework. Do you agree when you have a content heavy website, then you definitely shouldn't use Flutter? Otherwise, Flutter all the way. Like, do you agree with Tim? A lot of people didn't agree to this. So, yeah, that you don't have to cage it so much. So, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, just the last few slides here, the promise. Here are the links you can check out afterwards. And a thank you from my side. And now I'm already adding Rene to the stream. Hey, Rene, while we are waiting. Oh God. Your audio cut out. Is it just me? Sorry, I had to mute him. I don't know if it's just him or if you. Sorry, we just need to resolve this very quickly. Yeah, first of all, do you have any questions regarding what you heard in the last couple minutes? While Rene is resetting his setup. Yeah, Rene sounds very weird. But this is not a question. I cannot answer it. What is happening with him? So, but just maybe to conclude, I definitely I enjoy my daily business, but just from a developer convenience standpoint, I think that Flutter and Dart are heading in a very nice direction, and it's very nice to work with. Not that it's surprising to you, but just to confirm from my side also. Let's try again with Renee. Oh my God, it's even worse.
Better now.
Yeah, it's like it's very robotic and dragged out. He's gone now. Yeah, always these technical issues. Always these technical issues. We have a yeah. Thanks, Mike, for taking control out of my hands. So, what was the criticism of this Tim concerning using Flutter for web pages? So, just to quickly go back to this page. So, just for reference, right, that we are on the same page. So, I'm not 100% sure of the title, but he's like one of the lead engineers or product managers for Flutter. So like he's a really big deal, and it's not really criticism. I mean, of course, like he loves Flutter, like it's his technology. It's just how you define it. Like we have to differentiate between websites and web apps. So web apps are often also something you would have like in a single page application you would build with Angular, Vue.js, React, like single page applications that are all or like doing most of the stuff on the client side of things. And of course, as we all know, Flutter doesn't support server-side rendering, at least not yet. So also everything is done in the client. And then the question is, do you want content-heavy website, especially when you want to have a lot of content, like think of a content management system that is changing constantly. And then it's the question like, do we really want to do it with Flutter, or do you really want to more or less focus on app-like websites, like where you maybe don't have so much text interaction, you maybe have more simpler workflows. Think, for example, PayPal. No, yeah, PayPal, for example, like where like the most general use cases you have an amount of money you want to send to somebody, and then you have a list of transaction. Like maybe this is a good example you could use Flutter for. But when you think of WordPress web sites, for example, like blogs and such, where you have a lot of administering, then it's the question: do you really want to use Flutter for this, or a static site generator like Gatsby, for example, which is based on a React framework? So there's a lot of opinions that can be have. But I can now see Renee is back again.
I hope it works now.
Oh, it's super crisp now. Nice.
Oh, okay, great.
What
Was
what are
worried.
your what are your thoughts on Flutter Web and this controversy that happened around Tim?
Yeah, I think the problem is that that the goal of Flutter, or at least a lot of people think the goal of Flutter is to tackle as many platforms as possible. And since Flutter announced the stable release of web, they all have hope to switch over to Flutter for web and web development as well, which would make it all very feasible to have one code base, maybe some different layout constraints, but then like serve the application on all the platforms. But in the end, like it can't be the solution for everything. So I think using it for a web app, for an actual application, it's perfectly fine. But using it for a content-heavy page, there are other better solutions. I don't think, at least I don't, that's my assumption at least, I don't think that Flutter will be a good position or a lead there anytime soon.
Which is a very good step towards your topic, right? Like,
Yes.
because for this sake, there was an implementation that should help with web development also, and we're excited for your talk.
Yeah, indeed. Let me just switch over to share my screen, and hopefully this works as well. So I think now you should be able to see my screen, right?
I have to add it to the stream, and I will go out. Have fun.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So I will have to cut short a little bit since we are kind of over the time already. But yeah, first of all, what's my talk about? It's called Level Up because it's the talk about the new navigator approach Eric already mentioned before. It's like stepping up from 1.0 to 2.0, how they are actually called. And they are handling the transition or the navigation application differently. And I will give you some insights about that just in this talk. Well, first of all, what is navigation? I mean, most of you probably know that already, but I just want to have the correct foundation for every one of us. Navigation is basically the way how you want to navigate or move through your application. You will have different views. For example, if you want to show your home screen, or you want to show your settings screen, or any detail pages or whatever, you will have to transition to different screens in order to divide all the information, all the stuff for different screens. And therefore you will need some kind of navigation. You will do it in like almost every kind of front-end application at the end. So it's like, it's the foundation for a lot of stuff. And you will of course use it in mobile development as well. That where you have been using the Navigator 1 approach all the time until recently. You in quotation marks, since you can later on see it's quite around for some time already. But for the first time, you have always been relying on the Navigator 1.0 approach without knowing it probably. It just was the navigation for you. And what you've done is like having a screen, and then for example, using the push function on your navigator, which will just like put in your new screen on top of it. It's like having a stack of screens, and you just want to say, yeah, I want to go to a detail screen, and then you can just say, push my detail screen on top, and it will just layer the new screen, right on top for the viewer or the user itself. And you can do it the same one other way around as well. You can just pop the page, which means you will just take away the detail screen again and see the home screen again in this example. This is very simplified, of course, but for a lot of cases, you can just do that and will be fine for a very long time. Probably in bigger environments, or if you want to have a cleaner code structure, you will have some struggles to keep everything intact. But for the most time, using those two methods will work fine for a long time, as I said. And as I said, it's like pushing it on top. And to see it in a better perspective, I've shown you the tree of a Flutter application. You can see at the very top, you can see the navigator widget, which is the navigator which is handling all the navigation. And right beneath it, you can see the settings view. Let me just close all the other details. The main focus should here be on the settings view. And now if you call the function I just introduced earlier, the push function, you say you want to push another view on top of it, and it will actually be on top of it. It's like a stack, and you just put another view, like the about view, you just put it on top of the other view. So the settings view is still present behind this one, and it's just like in a stack put on top. And later on, you can just call pop, and you will have the settings view again. So in the end, it's just like, like trying to control the stack in the navigator. And this is the decision of what the user sees and how the whole navigation part works in the background. So not a lot of magic, actually. It's just like easier for you since you have the navigator widget and don't have to use a stack and do it on your own. So, but you could, but the navigator is way more efficient in that, probably. So what's the problem? Why not use it? I mean, it works. And to be honest, like in my applications until now, I've been using the Navigator 1 approach all the time, even for bigger projects with a lot of views, with a lot of logic and stuff. It worked out quite fine. But as Eric already said, with web being in production with Flutter 2.0, you had to re-implement the navigation part in Flutter because the fundamental idea of navigation was not suitable for handling web environments. And as you can see, you also have one problem, you could say, is that Flutter itself is declarative, which means all the stuff you do there, all the UIs you want to create and build is being done declarative. It means you just explain how it should look like, just like in HTML. You just put in some center image, just put in some container image, and then a row, and then a column. You just put them all together, and you declare how your UI should look like. But on the other side, if you want to navigate, it's like the imperative approach, which means you actually like call a function and do it on the fly, which is like in kind of another approach what Flutter is usually look like. And so that's like one thing which could be tackled. It's like, I mean, it's not bad. It's not like you have to do it, you have to change it just because of this fact. But on top of it, another problem arises is that managing views on different layers is actually a problem. Like, as I said, if you have your passion project, your smaller project, it might be like important to you to manage the navigation, the stack more precisely. Usually you just want to do like push and pop the current page and just like care about what the user sees up front and what is happening behind, how many views you have. It's probably not a problem. But if you have larger applications with different kind of authentications, maybe some kind of role concepts where you want to, I don't know, hide views on the fly, change the routes dynamically behind, this would be like a really big pain to do with Navigator 1.0. And especially in a web environment where you can like change the routing on the fly by changing the URL, it's even more different to do that. And that's why you need something new. And for example, in the general web-like handling of URLs, like, URLs have even additional information like fragments or even parameters you can pass through. So link can even hold more information than just the routing itself. It can have even some additional information for a view. For example, if you want to go to a detail view, you might even pass like an ID or even pass filter options. And you need to, or you want to be able to handle them. And Navigator 1.0 is not like very good in that, and especially not if you have a user base which can actually manipulate the URL. This is not what Navigator 1.0 had in mind as it had been implemented. So that is something that should have been approached as well. And the last thing, like the list could go even more on, but this is like the most important part for what I found out. And the last thing is deep linking. You may know like deep linking is the feature where, for example, you're on your messenger of your choice, like Signal, WhatsApp, whatever, and you are then clicking on a link which then for is like opening to Reddit. And if you have the Reddit application installed on your device, you may see that if you click on that link, it's not your web browser or your web browser which is opening. It's actually the app itself. And in the app itself, you will be in your desired position. Like, for example, if you get a Reddit link to a specific comment in a post, opening this link will directly bring you to the post, to the comment in your application. And you want to be able to do that with your application as well. And with Navigator 1.0, it's possible, but like very a pain in the ass. So that's another point why it's important to have something new. So that's why the people at Flutter thought about, okay, we have to do something else. And that's where the idea of the router, the declarative API approach, arose. And you can see already at the bottom, this publicly shared document where they all like shared their thoughts, their approach on how to tackle this, what they want to change in Flutter, has been created already in September 2019. So it's already kind of old in perspective, that they had this idea in mind to change it and to have an upgrade to that. But it's just recently that this whole approach was actually like in place and really used and came up with all the packages and stuff. But the idea has been there for quite some time. What is it doing differently? It has a different approach of how to do it. Since I said at the other slide, it's a declarative approach. It's not like that you, for example, press a button and then just call the navigator and say push this page. It's different here. What's happening here is you press a button. What happens afterwards is you change your state of your application. For example, after clicking the button and some authentication part in your app state, it might say you are logged in. It might be a change property in your app state. And what will happen after that, your router is like listening to your app state and sees, oh, now you are like logged in. oh, okay, then I have to do something. Then your navigator is being like delegated to say, okay, now that you're logged in, you have to build a different stack of views now. Maybe before you had your splash image or splash view and then your login view. And after being logged in, you change it. You remove your login view, you remove the splash screen, and just say, show the home screen, for example. This is a good example for saying you want to manipulate several routes, like not only one page, one view, but even the ones below that. So you want to be able to work with the whole stack, and that's what you can do with this approach. And while this looks very good, going into more detail, and I don't want to go in the actual detail here, but this is like the official way of how this router is talking in Flutter itself. You can see it's kind of more complex than just calling navigator push and then pushing something into the stack. It's more like the operating is telling the root information provider something. This is telling the parser something. The delegate is listening to it, is then calling to your app state. The app state is calling to the router delegate and then to the router. So you have way more communication inside for the whole navigation purpose. And it's kind of like pain in the ass, to be honest. The idea itself is pretty solid. Like, I understand where they're coming from. They want to be able to handle all the different entities which could interact with the router. Like the operating system might like impose new information. Your app state might do that, and you have to be able to listen to that and to do the right request. So the idea is not bad, but the implementation is actually a bit tricky. So another very good quote I found is in the documentation itself is, typically, small applications are served well by just using Navigator API, so the 1.0 approach. More elaborate applications are usually better served by the router API. So this summarizes what I said earlier, where I said even I'm doing a lot of Flutter stuff, and I even have some bigger projects, and I've been using Navigator 1.0 just fine by now, and it works, and I'm not like it's not like I'm missing too much. Like, I'm not tackling web currently, so that's one major thing. But as it says here, the router part is more elaborate for big applications, as I said, with having access to the stack and manipulating it all the time, having deep linking part and stuff like that. So don't worry, even Flutter team said that and is like having this in mind. So you can still use 1.0. That's why it said the new API changes to the router thing. It has no indication on your 1.0 stuff. You can use it as you've done it before. So there's no breaking change. You can just go on. You can like close your eyes and try to avoid Navigator 2.0 as much as you want. You can do that. It won't hurt you at night. And so you can just work with 1.0 and it'd be fine. But still, if you're like in the position where you think, yeah, well, the things you just pointed out earlier is stuff like I want to do. Like, I want to do deep linking. I want to manipulate the stack and stuff like that. And I want to tackle web stuff. Well, then you might be in the need of actually trying to implement the router API. And let me tell you, it's not as straightforward as I hoped it to be when it came from Flutter itself. Like, because as I said, I thought earlier, if Flutter is implementing it, I would hope it would be more straightforward, like easy to do. But let me tell you, it's not quite as easy. Well, first of all, I just showing just some small code snippet. I don't want to go into much detail, but like, you have to do stuff like this. Like, without everyone telling you that, you have to put in some mixings. You have to put in the change notifier. Otherwise, it won't like work as you think it might. You have to put in the navigator observer. You have even to put in the pop navigator router delegate mixin. Without anyone telling you this specifically. Like, you might find it somewhere very deep down in the documents, but like very rarely. And I have to find it out from several sources to do it. And let me tell you, this is the correct way to do it. But it's not very nice. And the other thing is, you have to like know that you have to like listen to this override methods. Like, you have to listen to them and like change your state internally. And no one is telling you that. You have to kind of know it. Like, I mean, you can avoid it, but then it's not working as you would think it work, because you have like some standards if you want to do navigation part. For example, if you like do the navigation in web, you like kind of know what you want, how it wants to behave, like change the URL, going back, going forward, and like missing some small stuff like this, and it won't work correctly. And as I said again, it's not told you anywhere. Another thing is, like I started out like trying to declare some roots for my application, like the root with the slash and the items, and like a more detailed one items, and having these params I can give in the about page and stuff like that. And then later on I thought, okay, now I have to somehow match those roots to what the user is putting in the web environment, and then like show the correct page. And then what I did, like it was like 1:30 in midnight, and I was very desperate and like very, 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 very tired already. And then I came up with this abomination. Like I would like tell you that don't look at it because it's like very nasty. But at the end, it worked out, at least for my use case, because I wanted to have a working Navigator 2.0 environment. And I had to write this abomination, like can be improved on very different levels, but I still had to do it. And it was like very time consuming. But in the end, I can show you, this is like a very, very bare bones example of how the Navigator 2.0 approach can look like in a web environment. Like for example, now via the root application with the slash, I open the drawer and go for the about page, for example, and you can see in the top, it says /about, and I show you the about page. And if I go to the history, you can see I was at the root one before. Now I go to items, and again, the history is populated. I can see where I've been before. And if I go back, I can even see that I've been forward already, and I can go forward to go back to items. So all this stuff works, which is very nice. That's what you expect. And I can even like manually change the URL on the fly. Like I just put in items like SWOT and nice, I think. Yeah, something like that. And now it puts me to the detail page of an item, which would probably be there sometime. And yeah, and all this stuff works as you expected it. And this video is short because I like had to put out some other stuff, because still, even though I've like implemented a lot of stuff, a lot of other stuff still doesn't work because you have to do all of them manually. And Flutter is just giving you the fundamental base, and you have to do everything else, even as simple as it is, like changing the URL and stuff. And to tell you that I'm not the only one who is like ranting a little bit about the stuff, there has been an UX UI research from the Flutter team, which try to address the community and say, please tell us, like, what do you think are the main concerns or problems with the currently implemented Navigator 2.0 approach? And they made this very long report. You can like see the link below. You can exit it later if you have the slides. And then you have a very long report. And one of the parts of the report is like addressing the complexity of the Router API. And they just list all the stuff you have to do, or kind of need to do, and this is not complete. It has to be go in even more detail later on. But this gives you a kind of overview what you have all to do on yourself, by yourself, before even thinking about using it. And the funny thing is, since it's so complex, all these packages started to arise which say, I implemented Navigator 2.0, and I think my approach is very good, so I made a package of it. Another one said it as well. So we have quite some list of packages trying to implement it. And so you can see this is a Reddit post like from 8 months ago, so it's even very kind of old. And there you already have a list of different packages. And the funny thing is, one of the commenters said, navigation is becoming the next state management, because it really is. Like Eric showed you the list of all the state management packages. Well, the navigation packages is like already half at that. So it's like very, very problematic to do that. So it's not only me, the whole community is like a little bit in questioning itself, like why has it been so hard, and why do we have to have all these packages? And they were even missing some packages, of course. And like the most important package, at least I would say it's like one of the most important package, is the Go router. It's the one that Eric already also talked about. It's a package that someone from Google itself, like a product manager, the Chris Sells, he developed it on his own. And this is currently the most recommended one, since it's kind of complete and very convenient. And the thing is, like, once you use the Go router, the only question you have in mind is like, why is this not like the solution of Navigator 2.0 itself? Why is not like this the approach Flutter did itself? But again, Flutter is trying to do only the basic stuff, so you have all the freedom to do it as you like it. But, well, I mean, at the end, it's their decision. We are lucky to have all these community guys who work on stuff like that, so we can rely on them. And if you're up for it, if you have some very, very specific behavior, you can implement it on your own. I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest, but the Go router is a very good strategy to go there and just tackle that. I tried to be a bit faster this time because we were short on time. We are even over time already. So bear with me that I was a bit fast on that. But my main aspect there was to give you just an overview of where the problems arise and why we have Navigator 2.0, and to tell you at the very end that you can actually use it, and it is actually pretty good, but not on its own, with a good package. At least that's my message for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
Yes.
Yes, I actually put the link to the Flutter Gems routing section in the chat, so you can take a look, and it's exactly as expected. Like it's not quite as populated, but it's getting there. It's getting there.
Given the time Navigator 2.0 is out, it's still pretty large amount of packages.
Yeah, it's a topic on its own.
Yeah.
So as Renee said, we are a little bit short on time, so we are probably not having time for a whole AMA today. So maybe if you have anything, no, this is the wrong banner. Hide it. So if you have any direct questions towards Renee about Navigator 1.0 or 2.0, shoot now. Otherwise, just reach out to us in the Flutter meetup group. We will also post a link and then to the examples and the slides we used. And keep an eye out for the next events then. So do we have anything in the comments? Is anyone still here? Yeah, it's pretty late on a Thursday after evening.
Yeah. Like I said, I hope that somewhere in the future we will be able to have an on-site event. Actually, like we were very looking forward to that. Very unfortunate, but given the circumstances, it's the right decision, of course. But yeah, maybe in the future we will be able to do that on-site, so we can like actually interact with each other personally, which I think is way better to have this kind of conversation. But yeah, other than that, as Eric said, you can always reach out to us via social media. There are different ways to do that, Twitter, the meetup page and stuff like that. So we can even ask questions there and talk with us there later on. Otherwise, I would say you can just look out for the next meetup, which is probably happening in around 3 months, hopefully, at least if we stick to our schedule.
February, probably, I would say.
Yeah, probably, if everything works out.
All right, so there's one comment that says thank you. Nice. Yes. Okay. Then also thanks from our side for your attention, for sticking with us, and then have a nice rest of your Thursday evening, and then see you next time.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.